When Ethan arrived at the ranch, the dust had already settled on years of silence. The old gates creaked when he pushed them open, and the dry wind of autumn swept across the open field, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and hay. The ranch had belonged to his late uncle, a man he barely knew, and now it was his. An unexpected inheritance that felt both like a blessing and a burden. Ethan had no one left in the city, no family, no close friends, just memories that had grown too heavy to carry. The open land seemed to call him toward a quieter kind of life. The ranch house stood strong but tired, the paint faded, the roof sagging a little. When Ethan stepped inside, his boots echoed on the wooden floor. Dust hung in the air like ghostly mist. He could almost feel the years of loneliness that had soaked into the walls. Still, something about the place felt alive, like it was waiting for someone to notice it again. He unpacked what little he owned, a duffel bag, a few shirts, an old picture of his parents, and decided he would fix everything, little by little. 2 days passed quietly. He spent the mornings repairing fences and the evenings watching the horizon turn gold as the sun went down behind the hills. He spoke out loud sometimes just to hear a voice, even if it was his own. "Guess it's just you and me now," he said to the ranch one evening. The wind whispered back through the tall grass. That night, as he was closing up the barn, he heard faint laughter. It wasn't the kind of laughter that echoes from far away. It was close, warm, and real. He turned quickly, his flashlight cutting through the shadows, and saw 3 figures near the porch. They looked young but not like children, maybe in their 20s. One of them stepped forward and waved her hand. "Don't be scared, mister," she said, her voice soft and careful. "We didn't mean to startle you." Ethan frowned but didn't step closer. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The girl with long brown hair and a dusty hat smiled shyly. "We used to live nearby," she said. "We came to see if anyone finally moved in." She looked over her shoulder and the other 2 girls came forward. One was taller, with short blonde hair and bright eyes, confident but kind. The third was quiet, almost hiding behind the others, her dark hair tied in a loose braid. Ethan studied them, unsure what to think. "This place isn't exactly near a town," he said. "You walked all the way out here?" The blonde girl shrugged. "We don't have much of a place to go anymore," she said simply. "The land we stayed on got sold last winter." For a moment, none of them spoke. The night air felt colder, and the sound of the crickets filled the silence. Then the first girl smiled again, half teasing but not cruel. "Can you handle the 3 of us, mister?" she said softly, like a challenge mixed with a joke. Ethan blinked, not sure whether to laugh or sigh. "Handle you?" he repeated. "I can barely handle this ranch." That made them laugh. Real laughter this time, light and almost musical. Something about that sound eased the heaviness in Ethan's chest. He found himself smiling, too, against his will. "Well," he said after a moment, "if you're hungry, I've got beans on the stove. Not much, but it's warm." The girls exchanged glances, hesitant but grateful. They followed him to the porch, wiping dust off their boots. Inside, the warm light from a single lamp flickered over the old wooden table. Ethan poured the beans into 4 bowls and handed them out. It felt strange, almost like sharing dinner with strangers from another time. They ate quietly at first. Then the blonde girl broke the silence. "I'm Claire," she said. "That's June." She nodded toward the girl with the hat. "And that's Lily." Ethan nodded. "I'm Ethan. I guess this place is mine now." June's eyes wandered around the room. "It looks just like it used to," she said softly. "My dad worked here for a while before things went bad. He always said this ranch had a soul." Ethan looked around too, at the worn beams and the photographs still hanging crooked on the wall. Maybe he was right, he said. By the time they finished eating, it was late. The girls thanked him and started toward the door, but when he opened it, the rain had already begun, soft at first, then harder. The nearest town was miles away, and Ethan couldn't send them out in that storm. "You can stay in the guest rooms," he said. "They're dusty but dry." The girls looked surprised, almost relieved. "You sure?" Lily asked in a quiet voice. "Yeah," Ethan said. "No one's used them in years anyway." He fetched old blankets, aired out the rooms, and showed them where everything was. The ranch, which had felt empty just hours ago, suddenly sounded alive again. The soft creak of footsteps, the quiet talk from behind doors, the sound of rain against the windows. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel like he was the only living soul for miles. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window, and the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. When Ethan came down, he found June cooking eggs and Claire fixing a broken chair leg with nails from the shed. Lily was sweeping the floor, humming under her breath. He stopped in the doorway, startled. "You didn't have to do all this," he said. June smiled. "You fed us, remember? We thought we'd return the favor." Ethan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Well, I can't argue with that." Over the next few days, they settled into a quiet rhythm. Claire helped him repair the fences. June tended the small vegetable patch out back, and Lily took care of the animals. The laughter returned to the house, soft at first, then steady like the heartbeat of something waking up again. One evening, as the sky turned pink and orange, Ethan sat on the porch with the three of them. The ranch stretched endlessly before them, peaceful and wide. June looked at him and said, "This place doesn't feel lonely anymore." Ethan glanced at her, then at the others. "Neither do I," he said honestly. They stayed silent for a while, just watching the horizon. Then Claire spoke up, her tone half serious, half playful. "So, Ethan, can you handle the three of us?" she said again, echoing that first night. Ethan laughed this time, a full and easy laugh. "I'm starting to think I can," he said. "As long as you don't break more chairs," June grinned. "No promises." The sound of their laughter drifted across the open fields, mixing with the wind. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something he hadn't known he missed: belonging. He didn't know where this new chapter would lead or how long it would last, but for now it was enough. The ranch, once silent and forgotten, was alive again. And somewhere deep down, Ethan knew that maybe his uncle hadn't just left him land and walls. He had left him a chance to start over, to find family where he least expected it. That night, when the lanterns went out one by one, Ethan looked up at the stars outside his window. The sky was wide and full, the kind that made a man feel both small and infinite at the same time. He smiled quietly to himself. The old ranch no longer felt empty. It had laughter, warmth, and three souls who had somehow found their way back to it, just like him. The days passed gently on the old ranch, each one filled with a quiet rhythm that Ethan had never known before. The mornings began with the soft sounds of clinking dishes, the smell of coffee, and the chatter of three voices drifting through the kitchen window. The house, which once echoed with emptiness, now carried the warmth of life again. Ethan had learned to wake early, not because he needed to, but because he liked hearing them talk, laugh, and argue about small things. It made the place feel real. The ranch was changing, and so was he. The broken fence lines were fixed, the barn had been cleaned, and new seedlings had been planted behind the house. The girls worked hard, never asking for much, and Ethan found himself looking forward to each day. He didn't know exactly who they were or what they'd been through, but he could see in their eyes that life hadn't always been kind to them. One evening, after dinner, the air was cool and filled with the chirping of crickets. The sun had slipped behind the hills, leaving the sky painted in soft orange and purple. Ethan sat on the porch steps, carving a small piece of wood with his pocket knife, when June joined him. She sat beside him quietly, pulling her knees up and resting her chin on them. "You ever wonder why some people end up alone?" she asked softly. Ethan looked up from his carving. "All the time," he said. "Sometimes it's not about what we did wrong. It's just how life goes." June nodded slowly. "That's what I tell myself too." She hesitated, her eyes distant. "My dad worked this land years ago. He used to say this ranch had a spirit. When he passed, I didn't know where to go. Claire and Lily were the only family I had left. We stuck together since." Ethan listened without interrupting. Her voice trembled a little, but she smiled faintly as if trying to hide it. "We've been moving from place to place. Never really belonged anywhere. When we saw the ranch again, I thought maybe we could stop running." He set down the knife and the piece of wood, turning toward her. "You don't have to run anymore," he said simply. "Not here." She looked at him for a long time, then smiled, a small, thankful smile. "You mean that?" "Yeah," he said. "I think this ranch could use the four of us." She laughed quietly. "Then I guess you really can handle us after all." From that night on, the air between them changed, not romantic or forced, just comfortable, like two people who finally understood they were meant to be part of the same story. The following morning, the rain returned after weeks of sunshine. It came in steady sheets that turned the fields into mirrors. Claire and Lily hurried around, covering the feed and pulling the horses inside while Ethan fixed the leaky roof in the barn. June brought him coffee in an old metal mug, her hands warm from holding it. "You're going to get sick up there," she said, looking up at him on the ladder. Ethan grinned. "Been through worse." The storm lasted 2 days. During that time, they stayed mostly indoors. Claire read old books she found on the shelf. Lily drew in a notebook she carried everywhere, and June cooked soups that filled the house with warmth. They talked for hours, about small things at first, then deeper ones. Ethan learned that Lily had once dreamed of studying music, but her family lost everything when their ranch failed. Claire had worked at a diner for years before following June, and June had promised both girls she'd keep them safe no matter what. When the rain finally stopped, the ranch looked fresh and alive again. Puddles shimmered in the sunlight, and the air smelled of wet earth and hope. Ethan walked outside, stretching his arms as he breathed it in. The 3 girls stood on the porch watching him. "You look proud of yourself," Claire teased. He smiled. "I think your hard work is starting to show." June crossed her arms, smiling too. "You mean our hard work?" "Yeah," Ethan said softly. "Ours." That night they had a small celebration. June cooked stew. Lily played an old harmonica she found, and Claire told stories that made everyone laugh until their sides hurt. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like part of something more than himself. The loneliness that had once filled his life was replaced by laughter and belonging, but life on a ranch was never easy, and good times never stayed untouched. A week later, a black truck pulled up to the front gate. Ethan was out fixing the fence when he saw it. 2 men stepped out, rough, sharp-eyed, and dressed in worn jackets. One of them called out, "This land belongs to the Walker family, doesn't it?" Ethan straightened, cautious. "It used to," he said. "Now it's mine. It was left to me by my uncle." The man nodded slowly. "Then you must be Ethan Walker." "That's right." The other man, taller and meaner looking, kicked the dirt with his boot. "We're here for those girls. They've been staying here, haven't they?" Ethan's heart tightened. "They're guests," he said carefully. "Why are you looking for them?" "They owe us," the man said coldly. "Ran off before paying what they took." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They haven't taken anything from me." "Not yet," the man said. "But they will. That's what they do." The conversation ended when Ethan told them to leave. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet anger. He didn't believe the men's story, not for a second. When he walked back to the house, he found June waiting by the porch. She had heard everything. Her face was pale. "They found us," she said quietly. Ethan stopped at the bottom of the steps. "You want to tell me the truth now?" June nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "We never stole anything. We just left a bad place. Those men owned the land where we worked. They didn't pay us for months. When we asked for what we earned, they got angry. So we left in the night. They said they'd find us, but we didn't think they really would." Ethan took a deep breath, the pieces fitting together. He could see the fear in her eyes, the kind that came from real pain. He stepped closer and spoke softly. "You're safe here. I won't let them touch you." The next few days were tense. The girls kept close to the house, and Ethan made sure the gates were locked and the dogs stayed near. But nothing happened. The truck never came back. Slowly, life returned to normal again, though a quiet understanding had formed between them all, one built on trust and shared courage. Weeks passed, and the ranch began to bloom again. The horses were stronger, the garden was full, and laughter once more filled the air. One afternoon, Ethan found Lily painting the barn door with bright colors. "What are you doing?" he asked, smiling. She grinned without turning. "Making it look alive again. It deserves to be beautiful," he nodded. "It does." By the end of summer, the ranch looked nothing like it had when Ethan first arrived. It was no longer an empty inheritance, it was a home. On the last evening of the season, the 4 of them sat around a fire outside, the stars shining above them like scattered gold. Claire roasted marshmallows. Lily hummed, and June leaned back, watching the flames. Ethan looked at them, the 3 girls who had walked into his life with nothing but courage and hope, and felt something deep inside him settle at last. "This place feels right now," June said softly. "Like it's finally ours too," Ethan nodded. "It is," he said. "It always will be." Lily smiled at him, her eyes shining in the firelight. "So Ethan," she said with a laugh, "can you still handle the 3 of us?" Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Barely," he said. "But I wouldn't trade it for anything. They laughed together, the sound warm and alive under the wide night sky. The old ranch stood tall behind them, no longer a symbol of loss or loneliness, but of second chances, quiet strength, and unexpected family. As the fire crackled low, Ethan leaned back in his chair and looked out across the land. The wind moved gently through the grass, whispering through the hills. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a man standing alone. He felt like a man who had finally found where he was meant to be, and the people he was meant to share it with.